All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Onitar dev stream. I'm you. I actually have to ping, and I can't do that with ripcord, so I have to go get my phone. Ha! Pinged you. All right, we're back. So, now that I've done that, that's really dumb. Let me close this. And, all right, I think I'm good. Yeah, we good. We're doing a morning stream. We haven't done one of these in a while. The reason being is usually I'm either not awake or not, like, I might be busy doing something else. Usually if I have to wake up in the morning, it's because I have to do something specific, which then prohibits me from streaming. But that's not true anymore. So yesterday we passed or achieved the landmark milestone of 50 items, which is pretty cool. So that's how many items we have. Also, I'm aware this particular page doesn't operate very well on mobile. Don't know what to do about that. Also aware that apparently you can't control F5 to clear cache on mobile, because there's no control F5, obviously. And the only way you can do it is to clear cache for everything, which is really stupid. So I don't know what to do about that one. That's web dev and apps. Two very unfortunate terms. Obviously, some of the stuff that I wanted to track here was the base stats versus the stats that I've actually documented. The other thing was I wanted to add a stat for item scaling factor. I don't know what it'll be called, though. Suppose it'll be... item. We'll just call it item factor for now, and then we'll say the... I guess we could say the factor that item stat bonuses are multiplied against. We'll just say item stats, because this could also be like, well, no, that would include weapons, which doesn't get factored in here. So yeah, it would just be stat bonuses. I was thinking it would also be stuff like, so if I have like a really high level item that gives me an ability that temporarily increases my item factor by like 1, which would double my stats in that case. I was thinking that not only would your, like, say you have a chest plate that gives you 5 armor and that now gives you 10 armor, you would have like a situation where like if you launch an ability that deals 25 damage, it would deal 50 damage. That kind of stuff. But usually abilities that deal damage are going to come from your weapon, which means they'll inherit your projectile stats. So that just feels cleaner anyway. In fact... I haven't commented on it in a while, but it's actually quite enjoyable to me that we have the system that we do for for what we got here. I really like that we have this system for updating the website. Just wanted to make sure those were synced. Oh, and you know what? This is not even related, but I definitely should do this. It's kind of embarrassing I haven't done this already. Suppose you can tell what my actual focus is. This is AI ally damage crash. Okay. All right, that's finally live. That should have been live a long time ago. So let's move this to the other monitor. And is this? Okay. Yeah, so at this point, if I refresh this stats page, you'll see item factor has been added. I've also added on hit stats. So by default, you obviously have like 0 of a lot of these. So let's take a look at the base stats. So obviously we went down the line here and we did HP, energy, HP regen, energy regen, armor, movement speed, turn rate, sight range, weight, 1 item factor. I don't think any of these need to actually be defined because they're all inherited via weapon. Although I guess I could say that you have 5 damage over time duration. We'll also change it from period to duration here. Duration. But yeah, your weapon range, armor pen, target count, weapon factor. Okay. So some of this stuff I can define, like 1 target count, 0 armor pen, penetration. Because the rest of this stuff is going to be inherited from your weapon, but defining the base stats, in at least in cases where they are actually present. I guess we don't need to define 0 stuff. If it's, like, non-zero values should be defined, and values that are completely empty otherwise don't need to be. So, let's see. Maybe it would be helpful to differentiate stats inherited by your weapon somehow. Like, put those in a separate category. But I guess it doesn't really matter that much because, like, as much as... So some stats can be inherited by your weapon, but other like, they can also be added by items, right? Like, thinking range or speed or whatever. Also, it's called weapon cooldown, but I think it should be renamed because I keep referring to it as attack speed in all of the items. So we'll call this attack speed. Changing this to make sense is like... So this is a question of what's intuitive. So the current system allows you to define number of attacks per second or something like that. Or no, it's just a flat duration between attacks in seconds. So like 0.5 or 1 or whatever. The number of seconds that you must wait between attacks is intuitive in that sense. But increasing attack speed means decreasing that number. So that's not intuitive to say I'm increasing attack speed as like a stat buff, and then I mean, it's intuitive to say that you're increasing a stat as a benefit, but like people will have to get basically people will need to realize that when you're decreasing your weapon cooldown, it is a buff. It's just less intuitive immediately for most people who look at it and be like, "Oh, this doesn't make sense. Why am I getting this item that decreases a weapon stat?" So the people are just going to have to adapt to that, I think. Even though that's not immediately as intuitive as just saying increased attack speed. Like, I would basically have to define some stupid extra relationship where, like, increased attack speed reduces attack cooldown by the same percentage or something. Which is, like, I guess that would be fine, but it just, I don't know why you would need that. So I think for now we'll just take a look at all instances of attack speed. The other thing that I was thinking about here is that for cases where you have a high weapon factor, normally this is used for like. So if you think about like the Goliath in Cosmonarchy Brood War, or just regular Brood War, as a matter of fact, and you think about its air attack, it fires both missiles at the same time. That doesn't really have a lot of value besides the aesthetics, and also the fact that armor is engaged with twice. So, in this game, your projectiles do collide with any enemy of the same plane that's in front of it, right? So if you're firing on an air unit and an air unit's in front of it, the air unit that's in front of your intended target will receive the bullets. That sort of thing. So, in that sense, it doesn't really give us much utility to fire like 2 missiles in the same breadth. And also controlling their offset like that, the way that like there's a slight launch spin to the Goliath's missiles where they rotate and then home in. Because homing is going to be such a rare ability comparatively, like most, like I would say 90% of attacks that get launched are not homing in this game as an average, probably higher than that actually. That means that we don't have the ability to like actually have that sort of behavior, right? So we need to, I think, define in this stat that additional projectiles are delayed. Subsequent projectiles are slightly delayed. Subsequent. I guess are launched. I guess we could say multiple projectiles have staggered launches, something like that. Or firings. So that way you can be like so if you have a factor of 2 and it's like a rifle, it would be sort of like a burst rifle where you fire one shot and then the other shot like pretty quickly afterwards. I'm not sure what we would call it, like whether we would have a separate stat that governs weapon, like the delay between attacks, but probably not. It'll probably just scale with your weapon cooldown, I guess. I don't know what it would be though. Oops. Okay. I think this is okay. This is fine. It's going to be a lot easier to vet some of these ideas when I actually have like when I have a little bit more time to execute on these ideas in an engine and actually like move around and test these interactions. So, all right. That's it. I guess we don't have a note that says projectiles are like, we should just have that note here. Projectiles. All projectiles from standard attacks to... what else would there be? Ability effects can be intercepted by hostile targets within that we'll just say by hostile targets. That's pretty similar or simple. What else do we got here? I guess we could say dodged or intercepted by hostile targets. This is why projectile speed is actually really important. Dodged or intercepted by hostile targets. The other thing is, so homing is like a homing attacks which always fly towards the intended target are rare. That way we sort of like delineate between the two attack styles. I'm wondering about what else might be a notable factor here. I think that's probably fine. Like, just noting that the projectile stuff works that way. It's probably okay. I'm trying to think about what other systems that are, like, I've weighed up and decided to use, but haven't been documented. Because Onitar's game design documentation took a sort of second seat, a back seat to the item generation. So, you know, that's fine in theory, but I guess we can take another look at the game flow and decide if we need to update any of this stuff here. And the primer too. Like, it's actually useful sometimes to just go back over this shit and see, like, all right, does this still jive? Is there some obvious area that I can expound upon? That sort of thing. So, in Onitar, players act as versatile warriors known as avatars. They serve alongside more ordinary soldiers called supplicants, which are in turn controlled by computerized commanders known as obsidians. Avatars are tasked with raising the monoliths that house enemy obsidians and will lose all of their... Well, there's an obvious error. Lose if all of their monoliths are destroyed. I guess we could say they're teams, to emphasize that. Before a battle begins, players are contained in a deployment zone near their team's initial monolith. We'll say for 30 seconds. During this time, avatars on the same team can discuss their intended roles, make item purchases, and plan their opening strategy with one another. Sure. After their starting timer concludes, the gates are lifted and the battle horns sound. Avatars can scout for information, escort initial attack waves, and engage in immediate skirmishes with their rivals. The other thing that I didn't touch on was the miscreants. So we can say escort initial attack waves, engage in immediate skirmishes. Yeah, okay, we'll say and that'll be the last one. Root out nearby miscreant camps. We'll say assault nearby miscreant camps. And engage in immediate skirmishes with their rivals. That's fine. Where do we got? Obsidians dispatch dedicated scouting parties to find information on one another and attempt to adapt their composition based on the map state, which can be further augmented by attentive avatars. Yeah, sure. I'm not sure if map state is a general enough term for most people, but basically this is like based on the current battlefield, like what enemies are active and stuff. Basically saying that the Obsidians adapt their composition. As the battle lines are drawn, Obsidians make a concerted effort to expand their spheres of influence and claim more resources for their war efforts. In more compact battlefields, supplicants will jockey for control over base sites, while larger arenas would see Obsidians assaulting neutral camps and miscreants to plunder the materials they guard. I suppose this is fine. I could say... this particular... so we could say... avatars are often encouraged to... or we could say incentivized to... Okay, apparently that word is not in this program's dictionary. Avatars are often incentivized to aid in the annexing of ash deposits. Well, we'll say unclaimed ash deposits, as this greatly improves their team's army. I don't know. Greatly augments their team's army. Yeah, as more resources mean more allies on the battlefield. There you go. Once equipped with additional sources of income, Obsidians begin establishing forward outposts to guard more distant avenues of attack and attempt to reinforce the front lines with defensive emplacements. Well, it's not that they only do this when they are equipped. So we'll say when equipped with additional sources of income, Obsidians can more easily establish forward outposts to guard more distant avenues of attack. Reinforcing the front lines with defensive emplacements is a common sight. And avatars can influence Obsidian decision-making by making requests. I'm still not sure what the UI will look like for this. So that's something that I should probably document later down the line, is come up with some ideas for that or a mock-up or whatever. So avatars can influence Obsidian decision-making by making requests. Also the idea of making, by placing requests in using a control panel. Avatars will always have information on their, yeah, we'll just reuse that. It was like current focuses and resources. Okay, at great cost, additional monoliths can be constructed to provide massive defensive power and serve as a backup location for the team's Obsidian. So this does say at great cost, but it kind of makes it sound like it's not going to happen very often. Securing such an important structure benefits avatars as well, because so we'll say this could be the last line, that's fine. Such an important structure benefits avatars as well, with additional item shops and bounty boards, providing more choices for the elite combatants. I guess we can say the versatile combatants. So one thing we didn't talk about is, like, at the time when I was writing this, I didn't really talk about the miscreants very much. So we could say... and the other thing that I've gone back and forth on is, like, the bounties and the item shops. So right now, I'm thinking the game's scale will be small enough that expanding to a new location will be enough for a bounty board and or a town center or whatever to be deployed. An additional an additional bounty board and additional item shop each, rather than restrict either one of those to be only monoliths. Which is one of the reasons why, like, basically all of the items that I have right now, I actually have to go and rename, partially anyway. I have to do Onitar, data, items. We have to do this. Let's do find in files, this file path. We'll do monolith shops. This will be allied shops. Okay. And then minus 25% weapon cooldown, I guess. I guess this would be attack, and I can find some this way. Oh, I see what happened. Attack speed. A lot of abilities. Cops. Yeah, as you can see, I would not want to do this without having this. Increases this, or so this would be decreases this weapon's base weapon cooldown. I guess we could say items base weapon cooldown. Weapon cooldown. Increases your movement speed by 25% and lowers your weapon cooldown by 25%. That's a fucking mouthful. It does make the wording a lot more confusing. Winds up your weapon for 0.5 seconds. For reducing your weapon cooldown by It was 50%. So. Okay. I think I've gotten all. The other thing that I wanted to do is check to see if attack and was ever used somewhere. Yeah, here it is. I guess that's another way that we could go about it, is we could look at it like weapon cooldown reduction, and that would be like an intelligent way, I guess, of resolving the conflict. Let's go back to the game flow. So obviously I was talking about miscreants, I was talking about expanding and item shops and stuff. Obviously, under normal circumstances, attaching anything to a town center would be ripe for getting owned by people just building that sort of shit. Like, oh, I'll just spam nexuses or whatever. But since players won't be playing as Obsidians under normal circumstances, I don't need to worry about that design. It's also probably likely that I just make expansions really expensive anyway, so that, like, even in an absolute sense, it wouldn't really make economic sense for the Obsidian player to sacrifice that level of resources for the benefit of their allies. And also, there was probably going to be some sort of diminishing return thing where, like, after you reach 3 or 4 item shops, you probably have as many as you need for all of the items that you can acquire that way. And I guess bounty boards would probably scale a bit easier, but whatever. Oh, that reminds me. I can actually add a bounty and a trophy section to the right of this if I wanted to. I could have like a... Well, I guess trophies probably don't matter as much as far as items go. They would technically be items, but I don't need to worry about them. However, bounties make a lot of sense to throw down here. And I can just inherit the common, potent, masterwork, and ascendant traits for, like, what kinds of rewards they have. So that could be kind of interesting, I guess. Like, I guess when you click on it, right, you have, so acquired from, obviously, bounty boards. And then there'd be, like, instead of, like, weapons down here, it would be, or maybe under stats or something. I don't know. There'd be a separate reward field, like a field for what it rewards. So there'd probably be like under weapons, it would be your tasks, and under where abilities is, it would be your rewards. And so let me just give this to Veek. I was thinking we should have bounties to the item page, since they're items anyway. I will need a tasks section or field where weapons currently is, and a rewards field where abilities currently is. Rewards, tasks and rewards will need to support items. In there, both text and items as inputs. Okay, I sent that over to the Veeker so he can plug that in later. Okay. Let's see here. All right, we can elaborate a little bit on some of the early game options. So obviously I've talked about like scouting for information, escorting initial attack waves. Those two things can kind of be like considered like cooperating with supplicants or whatever. So basically I want to expound upon each one of those options as like in the game flow section. So it would be like we'll say initial waves of supplicant groups meet alongside initial waves of supplicant groups meet one another in let's say warring supplicant groups meet alongside the more straightforward paths between hostile bases, I guess. Each team's base. Avatars maintain shared vision with supplicants and the Obsidian's... Well, we can just say with the Obsidian's servants, soldiers, and infrastructure. Their Obsidians. Which allows them to make informed decisions about which... I'm not even really sure what you would call it. I guess which front of the battle to... supplement. And then there's also, like, there's that term where you're... It's not just reinforcing is obviously, like, the basic term. But there's another term when you're, like, specifically... it's like... Basically, the context is reinforcing, but in the context of, like, a building or something. Like, if you're trying to hold up a ceiling with a pipe or whatever. I don't know why that was my example, but... So the shared vision thing is obviously, like, pretty... It sounds obvious to anybody who's played an RTS before, but it might not be obvious, so I figured I would document it here. Jesus. Ugh. So, alright, they're supplementing the front of the battle. They're supplementing the supplicants themselves. And which parts of the war zone, which sectors of the war zone have yet to be contested. So that's sort of like the more grand strategy aspect of this, if you will. It's not really grand, but you know what I mean. And then the other stuff that we were trying to explain here were the miscreant camps and skirmishes with their rivals. We can kind of do this the same way. So another early target of avatars. There's many avatars. Lies in the form of miscreant camps, which guard certain treasures and resources. More powerful bands of these denizens maintain control over conduits of power that enchant items for a cost. So we'll say maintain control over vital strategic nodes, ranging from conduits of power that enchant items for a cost to beleaguered shopkeepers that run will sell their bizarre and their masterwork items. Once the coast is clear. There you go. Did a little rhyme. The most powerful of all miscreants reside in dens that can be hunted and, I guess, are not for the faint of heart. Okay. Then we have the Avatar versus Avatar stuff. We obviously have bounties described over here that we can elaborate on. Whatever the avatars decide to, I guess we could say wherever the avatars spend their, we could say, like, bring themselves as the battle begins. Find themselves as the battle begins. One thing is for certain. The opposing team's avatars will eventually we could say opposing team's avatars will be a prime target. Combat against other avatars be is some of the most challenging with mobility to and I guess we could say with survivability through yeah, we could say with only the swift and durable, poised to survive. With enough coordination, even more stationary and fragile avatars can... we could say the more stationary and fragile avatars can endure long enough to dish out unforgettable amounts of damage. But that requires a... Yeah, I guess we already talked about coordination. So it's sort of like vaguely describing team fights. And once hostile avatars are felled, any loot they had stored in their backpack is up for grabs. Can be plundered, can be nicked. If left unguarded. There you go. Easy. So I do need to explain bounties a little bit here. Not all items can be bought, especially not from conventional, from allied shops, which only provide an suitable equipment for the which cannot provide the highest grade equipment. Bazars, is it? Yeah, there you go. Bazars, initially guarded by miscreant, by gangs of miscreants. These items will serve avatars well, but the truly bestowed. in exchange for a completed bounty. Bounties are obtained from bounty boards and call for specific recipes before they can be turned in, which lends... I guess we could say... Put this down here. Bounties are obtained from bounty boards. They call for specific recipes before they can be turned in, which lends avatars with a completed bounty to tends to leave avatars with other ingredients. And quite attractive targets for their opponents. Bounties almost always require the... Yeah, I guess we could say bounties require the destruction of specific targets on the map. Yeah, we could just say specific enemies, ranging from supplicant, supplicants and miscreants, from more mundanes, to chieftains and avatars. But the rewards they provide are more than worth the effort. Alright, I think that's probably fine. Let's do some generation. Some pulsite. Let's also check the primer here. This is something I didn't bother reading. Inspired by RTS roguelike and MOBA games, supports a backdrop that achieves the middling skill of the RTS, replayability factor to match that of roguelikes, and a control scheme that closely resembles that of isometric MOBAs. I feel like roguelike is probably no longer accurate. We could probably just say ARPG. A customization. The customizability of ARPGs. We could say isometric ARPGs. So this is like Diablo, basically. That's why I figured I would mention that. Unlike conventional MOBAs, abilities, passives, and attacks are entirely sourced from items, which can only be placed in specific item slots depending on their type. There are also no... yeah, okay. We can say the concepts of static minion waves and lanes are also absent from Onitar, with fully fledged RTS-style AI allies constructing outposts mid-game and dispatching attack waves along dynamic vectors. That's fine. Onitar preserves the distinction between ground and air combatants, allowing for transport craft to ferry attack waves along impassable terrain and wings of fighters to be sent on surgical strikes. The many items provide players with attacks that can target both ground and air units. Some builds will be more reliant on abilities and allies to defend against flyers. That's fine. denote that it's a science fantasy universe, since people were asking about that. Maps are varied in Onitar, with an expected minimum of 5 distinct battlegrounds to be available early on in development. Additionally, Onitar matches are not always a tale of two teams. Free-for-alls between a diaspora of factions will be present in some of the larger battlefields. AI allies will be fully configurable in custom lobbies, allowing for a wide variety of starting conditions from the factions at play to their personalities and playstyles. In matchmaking, players will be able to queue in search of a specific list of unique factions and personalities, which will allow them to control which kinds of RTS-styled allies they serve on the battlefield. I'm not sure about personalities. I think it would just be factions. Of specific factions. Yeah. With a specific faction list. Not list of allowed factions. There you go. Ultimately, the scope of Onitar is far broader than the average MOBA, which will result in a more dynamic game flow while providing more tools for all players. Sure. Should be fine. What's up, Viker? Yeah, I don't think I need to change anything about the primer other than what I already did. There we go. So I was just going through the documentation we have and updating it. Gameflow received a pretty big update. Primer was much less. I added the projectile node over here. I added item factor as a stat and updated some of these other stats in terms of their wording. So I was thinking, Vik, that one of the things that I was interested in documenting is like weapon cooldown, basically. So basically what I've done is I think actually Marksman might have that. So I've changed all of the wording from attack speed to weapon cooldown, and I'm just going to make it so that like players are probably just going to have to learn that like a reduction in weapon cooldown is an improvement and not a... Like normally if you see a minus or something, you think it's actually a penalty, but in this case it's not. So people will just figure that out. Because items themselves never... at least all of the ideas that I've had so far have not had items penalizing you in any capacity. Unless it's like an active ability or something, right? Like their item stats or whatever, base stats, do not provide penalties. And I don't think they ever will. Because I would prefer, like, basically the way that penalties work is that they kind of allow you to bias the item more in a certain role. I would prefer that just happens naturally rather than sort of like enforce it. You know what I mean? I still got time. Nice. However, the wording of everything has gotten a lot more annoying when it comes to weapon cooldown. Because I used to be able to say like movement and attack speeds. And conceptualizing attack speed as weapon cooldown reduction is probably fine. But using attack speed, I feel like, would confuse people because it's not actually a stat. Unless we decide to make weapon cooldown reduction a dedicated stat. That's kind of what I've done here. So the Emperor Core is like the only case where I actually use the words weapon cooldown reduction, but that's because of like the writing of this, the wording of this. So I'm interested in your perspective on like, obviously I think weapon cooldown is the smarter play to go because it's a clear stat that tells you like how many seconds you have to wait, the time in seconds you have to wait before attacking again. But you probably remember when I was getting confused about like attack speed versus attack cooldown effects and implications in Cosmonarchy Brood War. Like this is probably over a year ago. Yeah, so basically like percentages would have a fall off of efficacy after a certain time. Yeah. Well, also, like, the difference between 0% and 10%, I think, is more than the difference between 90% and 100%, or maybe that's not the case with this system. I know Brood War had a bunch of stupid shit like increasing the attack speed of the Zethra core passively. Like there's a certain minimum frame delay or something before they can attack again, so it was kind of useless, basically. It wasn't useless. It had a use. It had benefit, but it wasn't as useful as it could have been, basically, is what I recall. Let me see if my phone's done charging. All right, it's mostly done charging, so that's fine. But yeah, anyway, I was thinking that you could conceptualize like, so if we wanted a more scalable stat, I guess we would do number of attacks per second or something, but I feel like that's a lot harder to grasp. Because damage per second is like a stat that you don't, like, you would just calculate and you would care about, I guess, as a player, but it's hard for you to like directly engage with that, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I feel like weapon cooldown is probably the cleanest thing, but the wording is going to maybe catch people off guard and it might not be very intuitive, if you know what I mean. Yeah, what I was commenting on earlier when I made the decision to change all the wording to weapon cooldown is because I was basically looking at the stat and I was like, attack speed makes like attack speed is intuitive to a lot of people in that like increasing it is a good thing versus decreasing weapon cooldown is also a good thing, but like you're decreasing something, so in your head you might think like, oh wait, is that good? It might be one of the only stats where you actually want a low number. Like I think in every other case a higher number. Oh no, I guess attack angle. Oh no, yeah, increasing that means that you have to, yeah. So yeah, all of the combat stats besides weapon cooldown, increasing it is better, basically. Maybe not for every single use case, but for the most part. And then obviously increasing these stats is all better, except for weight. Not that that really matters in the context of this. And then what, on hit stacks or on hit stats? Obviously increasing all of those is also better. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Bit rough, bit annoying. Anyway, I figured I would just throw that shit out there. If you have some thoughts on that, or if you have some thoughts on the bounty thing that I DM'd you about, that would be pretty cool. I was thinking like one... well, what would you describe attack speed as? I'm kind of confused as to what the difference would be. Would they both be literally the same stat? Because if that's the case, that is also confusing and not very intuitive. So. Oh, the other thing that's pretty intuitive about this system of using weapon cooldown is that anything that fire you, like, say you have the Warlock core, which fires a projectile through your weapon. Firing a projectile through your weapon would have a base... it would inherit your attack speed or your weapon cooldown. So if you wanted to cast this multiple times, you would have to wait your weapon cooldown, just like a normal projectile. And it would also deal damage in accordance with your normal stuff. You know, because it is just a projectile that happens to be enhanced. So I guess you could say like enhances your next attack or something. I don't know, but no, because it's like a target, so it would be fires a enhanced projectile is fine. That is indeed fine. So it would also proc like Iron Rot and stuff. Do I already have a head? No. Wait. Masterwork. No. What is this called? The 51st item. Yeah, that's fine. Easy. I should probably spend a little bit more time on the branches of items that don't have that many. Like, obviously, Nemesis has... It feels like Nemesis has a lot, but not really. Iris probably has the most, which is surprising. And then, I guess after that, it probably is Nemesis. And then it's mostly even. I'll say projectiles sourced from enemies within your attack range are reflected. I guess... Don't have really any good icons for most of this shit. Just have to start reusing stuff, probably. Category should be, what, 5, I think, right? Alright, now I just need to do the weapon. So the main idea behind this is that it's like very much geared towards frontliners. Obviously, it doesn't do the greatest amount of damage by itself, but it does harry. So and it fires twice. So if you hit an enemy twice, you will slow them for 4% movement speed, and it has pretty fast attack speed or pretty low attack cooldown. So you can do this pretty frequently. And then there's the parry stance thing, which you'll still take damage, but you reflect it back at them if they're pretty close. So they're very much encouraged to keep you at at an arm's length if they want to defeat you, or reposition or something. If you do close the distance, which is fine. Okay. I think we've done pretty good work so far. Obviously, now that I've defined some of these stats, I can add weapons and stuff that actually do them. Wait, what is the stat called again? Attack damage. I'll take a look at it in a second. TY. Yeah, the fact that these would be increasing or decreasing different things seems really overcomplicated. Like, what do other games do for this? Like, surely, I guess maybe they just have a less cogent stat, but it does the same thing. Or maybe they do this anyway and it just is hidden from the player. I don't know. Let's hold off on making any actual decision on this yet because we still have to investigate other games and see what else they do. Like, I'll take a look at maybe Dota will have an interesting way of doing it or something. But what I was thinking is we can. I don't want two stats that basically govern the same thing, but are only used based on buffs and debuffs. I do think that's actually really, like, bad form, if you will. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe there will be some sort of sense made to it. But my thinking is, yeah, it's not only a bit confusing for the player. It's like it is just it adds more complexity than I think needs to be there. But if we have to bite this bullet later, we can. I just won't. I don't want to make a decision on this just yet because there's some stuff that I haven't considered. So I'll think about that. But I don't. Yeah, it shouldn't. It shouldn't be that IMO. Yeah, I mean, we'll just investigate more stuff basically, and that's fine. Might make the combat display increase armor pen instead. We'll see. I think you would still have a base cooldown, wouldn't you? But I don't know. Oh, this second one can be 500. Yeah, so you'd still have two stats, even if one of them was only used for base calculations. Feels a bit whack. Okay. Probably no way I have another good helmet icon, unfortunately. At least not for this purpose. Okay. Dog. Well, there you go. There's a head armor or head item for uh, every class now. Also known as Epic. Pendants are going to be a little bit harder to conceptualize, probably. And it does feel like we should have more hand items as well. Obviously, having another Nemesis item to Nemesis weapon for the purposes of augmenting the dispatch pistol, or not augmenting it, but having an item you can actually buy would make sense, sort of like the inversion beam. Although this isn't really a weapon in the same sense, but you get the idea. So if we could just grab, what would be that? That would be 4 more weapons. That would make sense. Or 4 more hand items. It'd be interesting to come up with non-combat oriented Nemesis items, like stuff that still benefits and fits within Nemesis as like a branch, but doesn't actually involve damage. Obviously, there's plenty of things you could go for with that, but interesting to imagine it. I will take this opportunity to BRB, and when I come back, I'll spend the last like 20-30 minutes of the stream smashing some more weapons, probably. And we'll see where we go. But I have to use the bathroom, so BRB. Now there's an idea, Viker. I like that idea. It doesn't really, like, it sounds maybe a bit grandiose to say this, but the fact that you can have, I think, very interesting interactions with the items is the whole point of the system being so expansive. That you can have, like, insane combinations, right? So, like, I'll just pick a random core. So, projectiles gain +1 armor pen for every unit of range traveled, right? You get this idea, right? And then this is a bit hard to imagine right now because no other item is like this in the game. But if you get something that has piercing strikes as a weapon or just a passive from any other item, and you have this, then your armor pen would increase, thus proccing piercing strikes more often, and then they would travel further, which would then increase their armor pen again. And so you can kind of see that aspect of it, right? So, like, basically mixing and matching a lot of this stuff between the different item classes or item roles is, I think, pretty interesting. So, see, basically, rather than gate the player by having them only have like certain things. Yeah, like basically one of the things that we'll literally use in the marketing for this game is going to be like it'll just say like create your own hero or whatever. Like create your own, I don't know what term we would use there. But that would be it. And like, you know, there will be a shot of like I don't know. Maybe it'll be like a shot of like a Nemesis core, and then like three different things, like three or four different other things that they might do with that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you've got the Nemesis core, but you've got, you know, this melee guy with a lot of fucking mobility. You've got the range guy who fires while moving because he's marksman, or you know, something like that. I just imagine like there's so many different possibilities that with each item added to the game conceptually, obviously that increases the, like, in an absolute sense it increases the number of combinations you can have, but in a realistic sense, like a lot of these items can be used for so many different purposes. Some of them are designed to be a little bit more on the side of like obviously the hypnotic helm, right? Supplicants and summons within your vision range get +5 armor. It sounds like, oh, that's going to be for summons, it's going to be for the tyrant, but the architect could use it for his turrets. Anybody could use it if they plan on being around supplicants in general, like allied supplicants. Like you could pick this up as massacre or something, and then be like, well, I'm going to kill the enemy supplicants, and my supplicants will stay alive longer because I've got this. Like, there's so many different things you could use this with. It doesn't have to be just tyrant, and that's like a very specific example, but that kind of feels like that's for everybody. You know what I mean? Like the thermal visor thing with burning enemy within your vision range sounds like it's only for Firebrand, but then you remember there's an architect class. It's the Omen Core, has Wake of Fire, which sets people on fire. There's going to be weapons that set people on fire or do other things that like do damage over time or whatever. So it's supplicants, so not avatars. And also not structures. It's deliberately worded that way. It's supposed to be for enchanting either your own summons or like NPCs. I could have made it just allies, but then there's like worrying interactions. IMO. Also, it doesn't even really like a difference of 5 armor is not really going to make that much of a deal for avatars because armor pen is going to be so prized. But you know how it is. Well, no, some stuff is deliberately only interacting with supplicants or whatever. If it's like under the tyrant branch, is kind of like heavily focused on interacting with non-avatar stuff. Most things, you're right, will not create a delineation between different things. But I don't think this bifurcates the design, really. I think this is fine interaction because it's just specializing in a certain school of the game, basically. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do about raising, like reviving corpses or whatever. The like the profane wand and all the way down here the mantle of sin. I think maybe buildings just won't leave behind corpses in the same way. Like, I guess basically some things will be constructs, and constructs won't leave behind corpses. They'll leave behind rubble, and rubble can be interacted with in a different way, like maybe by architects or something. In fact, that actually reminds me, the anvil core has the scrapyard. So I will add a note that says corpses and rubble mounds, I guess, no, just rubble. And we'll push that. Okay, cool. I just didn't explicitly state the delineation between the two, basically, is the thing. So... Oops. Just wanted to note that stuff down. Okay. I got like 20 minutes or so before I gotta bail out, so let's make it work. I'll actually take a seat for this. So we wanted a Nemesis weapon, and some Shepherd, Architect, and Tyrant offhands, or just hands. That's fine. Easy enough to do that. I wonder how. I haven't decided whether or not I'm even going to implement unique items, but that is an item flag, so I do wonder sometimes about that. Well, that was easy enough to come up with. Oh, I guess I'll need to make this suborder 1. Although it'll automatically be that anyway. But... oh, the icon did not change. Alright. Let's go back. I don't know why that would be under common. That's really weird. Must have pranked myself. I did just realize that the funniest bit for me is always when you get like situations where you get these interactions that you don't imagine. And so the bright side core that heals allies when you attack them, if you build an item that gives you harrying, you'll be slowing your allies, which is not exactly intentional. I'll think about that. Maybe there would be like, because it makes sense to have like harrying or overheating as like a supportive item trait or something. So maybe we could have another item that like Zvi came up with the idea of an item that inverts buffs into debuffs when targeting enemies. Or something to that effect. So if you have like an on-hit effect that's a buff, you could attack an enemy and it be a debuff. But I suppose the same item could also turn your debuffs to buffs when targeting allies or something. I suppose the other weird thing is that your projectiles won't collide with allies normally, but if you target an ally, it will. So that's kind of inconsistent behavior, whereas it'll always target enemies. But I guess that's just like the sort of justification for that is that you've chosen specifically to target an ally. Because if allies can get hit with the projectiles, it just becomes a mess and not a very tenable system. This is actually order 4, and this will be category 4. Do suborder 0, glove, energy siphon. I could see this item being built for pretty much every class. That's a pretty good item. I don't know about 500 might be too cheap, actually. Let's bump it. Because I didn't have the lifesteal until earlier, or until later on in the concept. Yeah, we're definitely starting to see this top half of the item table fill out, which is pretty cool. Big fan. Let's do this. I don't even know how many items I added today. Jesus. Veek, you're gonna need to implement that. I guess we should have like a tracker for non-hidden elements or something. But the other thing I was gonna say is you're gonna need to implement the page for like the thing that where it tracks your. It uses cookies or whatever to track your like which items you've actually clicked on, so you can see which ones are new, or which ones you just haven't clicked on yet. What the fuck? I just happened to check started.net because I was looking for something. What the hell? There's a thread where you guys. Wowee. After selling nearly $250,000 of meth, I've decided to quit that life and go back to my old ways. Wasting my life away by making StarCraft maps. LOL. Holy shit. Holy shit. Wow. Wow. Oh, I'm glad I checked started.net on stream. That's a good use of my fucking time. Holy shit, that was worth it. That was worth the click. Jesus Christ. Whew. Wow. Wow. I don't know if I'll be able to recover from that one. Jesus Christ. All right, let's make the weapon. I guess we'll do that because otherwise this gets pretty out of hand, IMO. But not sure. I'll keep it at 750 because it is a melee range weapon, so I think that only makes sense. Okay. I wonder if damage return should be... I don't know. I guess that doesn't really make sense anyway for this game state. We'll just say... Oh yeah, I guess for cases where harrying exists, I should probably... Yeah, I shouldn't capitalize these things. What else had harrying? The sidearm I know had overheating, which we can get rid of. But there was something else that had harrying, and I just don't remember what it is. It's not that. It's probably like let's see. Trying to think about what else it would be. Oh, probably Bastard Blade. Yeah. Unfortunate that the only good sword icon I could think of using for the Bastard Blade is the same one as the Inquisition Blade, which is right next to it. Surely there's something else I can use in a pinch. Oh, excuse me. I guess I could just use fucking Ahmed again. Whatever. Although, I guess I can use a more accurate frame for that one too, huh? Sure. Fine. All right, so we've got still some work to do on pendants for sure. A couple weapons would be nice for obviously Shepherd and Architect. A couple hands, I should say. Gloves have been a surprising revelation since I didn't plan on adding those, but I had ideas for 2 quick ones, so I threw those in there. The extra on-hit stats being defined this way is actually really nice because it gives me a lot more versatility for stuff. Still not 100% sure with some of the items. Like the Fatalist Saber seems like it might be overtuned, but it is a melee weapon, so I'm willing to leave it alone. I kind of want to be careful about harrying stuff being ever being on ranged weapons, because it's really easy to like just keep hitting at that point. I like the sticking power of something like that, but I also probably want to have stuff like the Relentless Pursuit passive on some melee weapons. In fact, I guess that could be like a... I guess that would be an Architect weapon, since it allows you to stick. So the glove of the... Where is it? I just moved past it. This Relentless Gauntlet glove. I could add a hand. And this would be like... This would be 5, order 3, sub order 0 because there's no other item there. 1250. I guess we can do like +5 life skill. And then Architect. Oh, it's a Nemesis thing, that's fine. Obviously this is hand, and then oh, and obviously I have to add the weapon. I was gonna say that was a bit too easy. Now I know why. There you go. I feel like maybe the lifesteal is not necessary. It's a bit, I feel like maybe it's a bit overloaded, especially for a common item. Because it already has this passive. So, that's fine. Alright, I guess I could have given it armor or something if I wanted it to be more defensive-oriented, but I don't think that's necessary either. So, did a lot of work today. I've augmented quite a bit of the game flow and like the general description of this stuff and the stats. Obviously, added a ton of items. So, I'm pretty pleased with that. I'll do one last generate website and commit that just in case I changed something and forgot to. And then I will get add, get commit, and sync Onitar, ddd, get push. And yeah, we'll be good. So, cool. Good shit today. And I will see you boys probably tomorrow for another one of these streams. I don't know. I guess we'll just wait and see on that one. I'll try to make these a little bit more frequent since this is now the main focus, so to speak. So we will see. I will update the stream schedule after today, or like tonight, basically, later on. And that's it. Bye-bye.